Lord, everybody. Where to even begin? Thank you all so much for making the time. Welcome to the program. Please engage, like, share, subscribe. I'm going to try to pick up my tone a little bit here, but it is a deeply saddening, maddening, wrenching, despair inducing story coming out of northern Gaza. And I'm talking about the Flour Massacre. Flour, the Flour Massacre, the staple needed in order to bake bread or to create the most meagerest of food, right? In a famine situation. I love how the American media right now is calling what's happening in Gaza a famine. You see, they've abandoned starvation, right? Because people understand starvation. Dumbass Americans don't really understand what the fuck a famine is, right? But people at a baseline level do understand starvation. So I understand the pivot from the framing or from the descriptor from mainstream American news away from starving and towards famine, because that is exactly what is happening in Gaza. So the Flour Massacre occurred when aid trucks coming into the north of the country for reasons were flanked or being accompanied by Israeli IDF forces. And when starving Gazans, people in Palestine who have not been able to receive food aid, humanitarian aid in Gaza for almost a month, How long does it take for a human to starve, everybody? 3 weeks, 4 weeks? It's been almost a month since the last time aid trucks were allowed entry into Gaza because, guys, there are convoys of aid trucks all along the borders, along every border checkpoint. The problem is Israeli forces and regular Israeli citizens, aka the settlers, aka the colonizers, the Zionists. These people have deputized themselves to prevent aid from coming into Gaza to starving Palestinians. So what happened with the Flour Massacre? Don't know how it's being covered in the mainstream. I'm imagining completely like shit, right? However, I want us to take a look from some of the other media resources, and this first clip is coming from a British outlet. Not to say that they're much better, but they seem to be at least reporting it more accurately than I've seen from American press. So we're about to see a montage of clips. So the first clip is going to be a package, but what I want you to take away from the package is the Palestinian man, his comments about don't bring no more fucking aid over here, because if it comes with a fucking massacre, you motherfuckers can keep that shit, is basically what he told the people. But I'm going to let y'all hear it from his mouth. So that's the first clip we're going to see. And then we are going to see an explainer about the Flour Massacre. I think all of these clips are pretty self-explanatory. So let me just hush and let the Palestinian people and those that are immediately connected to those in this Palestinian struggle right now, as Israel engages in genocide. And the United States is right there complicit, holding its hand, going along with this shit. You ready to run it, Will? Let's take a look.
Well, Israeli forces have opened fire on Palestinians who are trying to collect flour in Gaza City. Have a look. These are images from Al-Rashid Street. Dozens there were killed and injured. Civilians were left scrambling to try to get to hospitals.
We have come here to get our hands on some aid. I've been waiting here since noon yesterday. At about 4:30 in the early morning, trucks started to trickle in. The Israelis just opened random fire on us, as if it was a trap. Once we approached the aid trucks, the Israeli tanks and warplanes started firing on us. If this continues like this, we do not want any aid delivered at all. Every convoy coming means another massacre.
Well, Israeli airstrikes, meanwhile, are targeting crowded refugee camps across Gaza.
At least 80 people were killed and 400 people were wounded at the same time for the same reason, the same place. For those who don't know, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, of Gazans, are facing a forced starvation in the north of Gaza Strip. They are starving to death, and the only way they can get food is to wait for food. So some aid trucks enter from the south to the north of Gaza via Rashid Street on Gaza Beach. And that's why, and because the amount of the aid trucks entering is very limited, maybe once or twice a month, people, fathers and brothers, started to sleep in the streets for weeks now. They're waiting for any aid trucks at least enters during the night so they can get some flour to the family. So tonight at 4 a.m. it happened. Some flour bags entered the north of Gaza Strip and people started running to get that flour, to get that food for their families. So the Israeli tanks opened the fire on them, shooting and killing more than 80 people, wounding more than 400 people. Their blood was mixed with the flour. The mothers and sisters, the family, will never bake that flour, will never bake that bread. They will never get back to their homes. They said goodbye to the family to get some food, and they will never get back with that food again. They were killed. Israel is using the starvation weapon against us. Israel is using the starvation weapon against the north of Gaza Strip to force people to leave, to evacuate, to empty the north. They are starving people. They are killing them when they succeed to get some food. Israel is preventing any food from entering the north of Gaza Strip, and if it entered like that truck, for example, what happened yesterday, they start shooting to people. It's not the first time for people to be killed while taking the aid. But that time, the number of people were killed is really, really great. Like 80 families lost the men of the family who are trying to get some food. This is insane. This cannot be normal. The starvation weapon is used against us. Israel is still, until now, using the starvation weapon against Palestinians in the north of Gaza Strip. People do not have anything to do. This is nothing but the 2024 Holocaust. This is a Holocaust. This is a real genocide.
According to the information that we have, dozens of them have bullets in their heads. It's not like, firing in the sky to restrain people if there was confusions and chaos. It was intentionally targeting and killing. This outrageous, massacre is a testimony to the fact that as long as the Security Council is paralyzed and vetoes casted, then it is costing the Palestinian people their lives. The Security Council should say enough is enough, and if they have a spine and determination to put an end to these massacres from happening all over again, what we need is a ceasefire. For heaven's sake, put an end to killing civilians, children, women.
Those comments there were from the Palestinian representative to the United Nations, and you heard him referencing yet another UN Security Council vote that was put up. I believe the resolution was initially presented by the country of Algiers. And I think everybody was with the shit except who? Goofy ass America. Now, the opening comments from the Palestinian representative to the UN there talked about the civilians, Palestinian civilians who were showing up to hospitals with bullet wounds because I buried the lead in the beginning part. In this Flour Massacre, Israeli forces killed over 100 people. The woman giving her very tearful testimony there initially said 80. That number has been revised north of 100. The amount of injured folks, numbers in the hundreds. I've seen reports from 400 to 700, but hundreds of people were also injured in addition to 100 being absolutely slaughtered. Now, the Israeli military release statement saying that the majority of the people who ended up dead were trampled to death or they were run over by tanks. And the testimony there from the Palestinian representative to the UN refutes that. And so does a lot of eyewitness testimony, especially for the folks showing up to get treatment or care, but usually showing up with bullet wounds on them, right? They have bullets in them. They were shot at. Most of the murdered in the Flour Massacre were murdered with Israeli bullets. And you heard the woman there also telling us this is not the first time that Palestinians seeking humanitarian assistance, seeking humanitarian aid so they and their families don't starve, have been fired upon by Israeli forces. I found lots of instances of that online, taken by people on the ground in Palestine and those that are, closely connected to those on the ground. But no, when you have citizens who are starving and they approach slash rush an aid convoy or an aid truck, they are coming to get food. They're not coming with weapons in their hands. And the Israelis to say that the crowd was moving towards them in a threatening manner, absolute bullshit. Those Israeli soldiers knew why those people were coming in such desperation, in such a furious desperation, because they are starving. Okay. And I know all of us over I can't say us overfed Americans because there's a lot of Americans here that are food insecure. But there are no places in Palestine to go get food, right? Not the food bank, not not the church pantry, you know what I'm saying? Nope. Nope. Every single crumb, everything that can be salvaged and turned into something consumable is being utilized. Gaza children are dying from malnutrition at incredible levels. People are literally starving to death. And Israel continues to be full steam ahead with this genocide, and they seem pretty much indifferent to international reaction. But you know who shouldn't be indifferent to international reaction or even domestic reaction? That is, it should be Joe Biden. Joe Biden is in an election year, and Joe Biden seems to think that just because he's running against Donald Trump, oh, well, it's a choice between me and you want me, democracy, or you want Trump. Mm-mm. It's not going to be that simple this time, Joe. You're not going to be able to make that same sell. This is not going to be the same turnout in 2020 to make sure that Donald Trump does not get the White House this time. It's not going to be that. It's not going to be that. And I don't think Democrats quite understand that. And shame on them because they're going to learn the hard way. And I wanted to say, while I was preparing this segment, and I'm looking through these videos and I'm hearing the absolute heartbreak and devastation. And I'm thinking back to when we just covered the Super Bowl massacre, right? These massacres seem to keep coming with a lot of frequency, sort of like the Israeli missiles and bombs, right? I was so furious and disgusted. I called Congressman Glenn Ivey, my congressman, a Democrat, Black Democrat, and I called Senator Chris Van Hollen. And I know people, some people who don't know me and don't really watch this show think that I'm some sort of, you know, foul mouthed barbarian, that I'm incapable of so-called civilized talk and civilized discourse. I know when I'm supposed to be cussing and when I'm not supposed to be cussing, okay? And the reason I don't cuss out congressional aides who answer the phone is because it ain't they goddamn fault, number one. And number two, you start cussing at the congressional aides. I mean, I really don't know what happens, to be honest. I've always called my Congress people respectfully, if not angrily. But I called Glenn Ivey's office today and I asked, I said, has a congressman released a statement condemning Israel's actions in the Flour Massacre? And the response was, should he? And I'm like, yes, he absolutely should. And when I called Chris Van Hollen's office, remember we watched that very impassioned speech from the Senate floor that Senator Van Hollen delivered, how he very clearly outlined, he understood the starvation, the humanitarian crisis. He understood why people are calling it a genocide. And then this two-faced motherfucker turned right around and voted in favor of sending more military aid to Israel and cutting humanitarian aid to Palestine. I called that motherfucker's office. Them niggas didn't even pick up the phone. Okay. They didn't even pick up the phone. They said Van Hollen office today, y'all, sent everybody to voicemail, sent everybody to voicemail. And I used up every second of my voicemail, letting Chris Van Hollen know that we see you, bruh. We see your transparent, fake, progressive, neoliberal bullshit. I told him, I said, in PG County, we call that talking out of both sides of your neck. let that be on the record. Please add that to my FBI file. Make sure you spell my name right. Like, I was so furious, guys, because again, I wish I could be inspired to violence. It wouldn't like, it would be a very short, it would be a one woman. They will put me down pretty quick. They put me down pretty quick. So let me use my strengths and my voice and my brain and my heart and at least tell these fools about themselves, which I did. Ben Cardin, I don't know why I gave Ben Cardin a pass today. His office might get called Monday. But gang, if that's all we can do right now, if you don't have the ability to show up at a protest, I know not everybody does. If you don't have the capacity to organize, I know not everybody does. So you have to do what you can do. Okay. And what we can do, at least, is give these elected officials the business. If they have to hear it from us, from our literal mouths, when we call their offices, when we flood their emails, when we at they asses on Twitter, when we tag them, please, any Palestinian videos that you see from the Flour Massacre, start tagging your elected officials, every fucking body, from the mayor, city council, to Biden, to your Congress people and your senators. Tag these dickheads. Because we can show them better than we can tell them. Okay, we can show them better than we can tell them. And to be clear, you guys, the international community is outraged against this. Pretty much every country, from China to Colombia to Cuba to Italy to a variety of places, issued messages, state messages of shock, of condemnation, in the strongest possible terms. Who was that? Whose statement was that? Was that Jordan's statement? Like, the way this shit gets reported on American media, you wouldn't even think that the rest of the world is on fire about what's happening in Palestine. Around here, it's just, what's Nikki Haley doing? Nikki Haley still in the election? Like, that's like one of the top 3 stories in the US. A person that has no chance of winning any fucking thing, still garnering headlines. Make it make goddamn sense.